This planet called Earth is big enough to accommodate all of us with our differences in terms of experiences, in terms of race, in terms of how much we don't have, and just generally in terms of how big we think we are and therefore need space. And therefore I just wonder how inclusive me and you as human beings are for those who are around us. Hello everybody, and welcome to Naomi's All-Inclusive World, where today I will be looking at some issues to do with inclusion and just how much society is inclusive, especially to those who happen to be living with disabilities. So what exactly is inclusion? It is overriding differences such as race, gender, class, and geography, and ensuring equality of opportunity as well as capability of all members of society. Disability inclusion, just simply put, is allowing people with disabilities take advantage of the benefits of the same health promotion and prevention activities that are experienced by those who do not have a disability. So some of the things as a society we can do to ensure that we are more inclusive, especially to those living with disabilities, will include this among many. The first issue we need to do as a society is acknowledge that police brutality occurs on everybody, including people living with disabilities. And just like we would stand out for someone who is able to, for lack of a better word, we should equally be able to stand out and stand up for people living with disabilities when they are faced with brutality from the police. Another thing we can do as society to make sure we are inclusive is number 2, integrate disability history in school curriculums or in school, setups. Disabilities need to be talked about more and more, need to be made aware, need to be, not be an alien to society. And one of the best ways we can do that is to have it covered in school curriculum so that students or pupils in school will start from very good ages to learn and get aware about different disabilities that they see around or that they will be meeting. Another way we can make sure inclusivity is experienced in our society today is to employ more actors with disabilities in the mainstream media. Like I said earlier on, human beings with disabilities are human first, they are people first, and they have all the abilities any other person would have. And most of the time, actually, you realize their disability might not even stand in their way. And therefore, just like society is quick to employ people who are able to maneuver around so easily, among other things, society needs also to consider actually employing more of those who have a disability here and there in the mainstream media. Another way we can ensure inclusion in our society is to view the disability community as a valuable consumer, so that the manufacturing of items being done, so that the products that are being consumed or produced for the market, we also have at the back of our mind those living with disabilities as part of the consumer bracket, so that then they can also get items that are suitable for them. They are human beings, they are consumers, they have money they would just like to spare or to spend like any other person. So let's also look at disability community as a valuable consumer in the market. Another way we can also make sure that we are an inclusive society is to increase disability representation and leadership in arenas or in places like in politics, in businesses, and in the corporate world, so that they will also be the voice to put out information about what they go through every day. Another way we can make society more inclusive of persons living with disabilities is by making sure we make these citizens, these neighbors, these employees, these friends who happen to be living with a disability part of the solution. So that, say, if we are working as a community on an issue to do with accessibility, let's have them as part of the solution, because they also need to access that place. If in the workplace, say, we are looking towards getting a solution in something like, for example, let's say maneuvering around for whatever reason. Let's have people living with disabilities who are our employees be part of that solution, so that then whatever is arrived at is inclusive of everybody in that office or in that community or in that home. Another way we can also make sure that our society stays inclusive for those ones living with disabilities is create inclusive classrooms, create inclusive exchange programs, create inclusive platforms, so that any exchange of ideas, any exchange of suggestions is not only for a particular group, but is for everybody. And that would even include a setup, if it's like a conference room, if it's like a seminar place, if it's like a classroom, if it's a school. Let it be inclusive of those who happen to live with different disabilities. Organizations are at their best when they welcome, respect, and also involve people of all backgrounds, including those who live with disabilities. And therefore, if as an organization, if as a corporate, one of our values is inclusion, let's make sure we live by that. And again, the community or the staff or the colleagues in that company should be able to make sure we live by the values we have said we do. And that would include inclusion of those living with disabilities, if that is one of our values. Another way we can also make sure we stay inclusive as a society is to recognize the talents of those with disabilities. Say it's in a workplace. If we have one of us who is very good at, say, for example, team building activities or icebreakers, or, just keeping the team entertained during seminars or something like that, let's recognize that as a talent and promote it by giving them a chance to, exhibit what they have, by giving them a chance to be team leaders when it comes to such situations. It actually just makes one feel appreciated, and at the same time, it might actually just be their talent. So once more, let's recognize the talents of those living with disabilities if we claim to be an inclusive society. As a society, for us to also realize the full benefits of inclusion, we should provide training to make it successful. No one is born already knowing, for example, how to work together well with someone who is visually impaired, with another one who is, say, for example, using an assistive device. No one is already born knowing that. But us providing training for people around that community to be able to include that will actually make it more successful and make it blend in well. Inclusion is a lot less expensive than most people think, but it still takes intention to do it effectively, and that would include training. If we want to stay inclusive as a society, we need to ensure that our communications are accessible. So that, say, for example, our society is inclusive, or our organization or our community is inclusive of people who are, say, visually impaired. Our communications need to be accessible for those who cannot read like the rest of the community. Our society is inclusive of people who are say, for example, in wheelchairs. Let our communications be at good heights where someone can still read them from their sitting position on a wheelchair, and so on. So let's live the gospel. Let's live our policies of being inclusive, if that is indeed what we say we are. And lastly, show people with disabilities in things like photographs, in images, on our websites, in our social media, and other materials and platforms, so that then the world out there, the community or those joining us and so on, will get it almost at first hand what we stand for, and in this case, inclusion, so that then at just a snapshot, at a glance, I can see, inclusion already spelled around, images on our websites and so on, and I don't really need to ask whether or not an organization is inclusive. I just need to have a visibility of who they are, and I'll tell that they are inclusive. It's my hope that this information helps you, think more wide when it comes to inclusion, and also get a chance to challenge your community, challenge your office, challenge your workplace, and so on. And just think about how much of inclusivity there is in your surrounding, in your community, and if there is not, probably you might need to think about it. I have attached some of the references I have used to get this information down below for your continual and detailed reading. And I just hope that we get to learn something every day, and just let's keep being inclusive and being more sensitive to our fellow citizens who in this case happen to be living with a disability. Thank you very much for your time, and if you haven't subscribed, please hit that subscribe button, and let's keep this information going wider and wider, and let's keep just making our society and our community more aware on these matters of disability.